A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, or maybe right here in our own cosmic backyard, a massive planet lost its moon. And the death of this moon may be why Saturn looks so weird. Some scientists hypothesize that not too long ago, Saturn was home to a supermassive moon that may have been 2 times the size of Earth. They dubbed this moon Chrysalis, which is also the name of a stage in a butterfly's life cycle. And like a caterpillar splitting into a butterfly, this moon may have split apart and given birth to Saturn's rings. This dramatic reshaping of Saturn's body could also explain why it spins on its side. But to understand how this moon might have met its demise, we need to take a closer look at Saturn itself. Scientists already knew that Saturn was a little odd. It's the only planet in the solar system that rotates on its side, with its equator almost perpendicular to the Sun. And most planetary scientists agree that something unusual must have happened to cause this. But they couldn't say what. In recent years, however, they've learned that Saturn's rings are also a bit weird. While rings are pretty common among the gas giants in our solar system, Saturn's are more extensive than the others. And those rings seem way too pristine to be as old as Saturn. All the other rings in the solar system are opaque and worn-looking, but Saturn's are still fairly bright and sharp. Scientists estimate that these rings are around 100 million years old, but they should look much more worn down if that's true. So, scientists started wondering if some cataclysmic event recently reshaped Saturn, giving it rings and knocking it on its side all at once. And that's when they thought of the moon. Moons are pretty normal things in the solar system. Most planets have at least a few moons, and some, like Jupiter, have more than a dozen. And while we do and know exactly how many moons Saturn has because they are also small and irregular in shape, it probably has somewhere between 8 and 14 of them. But one theory to explain Saturn's odd features didn't just require any ordinary moon. It required a moon that was at least 1.5 times the size of Earth. This supermoon would have been huge. For comparison, the largest moon in the solar system, Ganymede, is about the same width as Earth's moon, which is already big enough to cover 2 of the United States lined up side by side. And while Saturn does have a large moon named Titan, that moon is the size of Earth, not 1.5 times the size of Earth. So scientists theorize that Saturn used to have another equally massive moon. This moon would have been similar to Titan in both size and composition. And it would have been orbiting Saturn very close to the planet. But then something crazy happened. The moon got too close to Saturn and got ripped apart by the planet's gravity. If a moon got too close to Saturn, the planet's gravity would start to pull the moon into weird shapes, kind of like how your fingers warp when you squeeze them together. Eventually, the moon would get so distorted that it would literally break apart. Now, there are a few different ways this moon could have broken apart. In one scenario, the moon gets ripped into a bunch of little pieces that become the building blocks for Saturn's rings. In another scenario, the moon breaks apart into 2 separate pieces. One piece would go on to become the rings, while the other piece would crash into Saturn and change the planet's rotation. Either way, Saturn would be left with a whole bunch of loose rocks and debris around its equator, which would eventually coalesce into the rings we see today. But how do we know that's what really happened? Well, scientists ran computer simulations to find out. Simulations can help us better understand complex systems by mimicking them on a computer. It needed to be about 2 times the size of Earth. See, on Earth, rocks get withered down over time. Weathering happens when rocks are exposed to wind, rain, ice, or any other natural force that slowly wears them down. So the longer a rock is exposed to weathering, the smoother it becomes. But the rocks collected by the Cassini spacecraft from Titan were surprisingly fresh-looking. Many of them looked like they had been carved just a few weeks before Cassini arrived, not the 4.5 billion years before that scientists expected. That suggests that whatever formed Saturn's rings was made of the same stuff as Titan, and whatever it was made very recently. It also helps that the computer models predicted that this moon would have broken apart 100 million years ago, which lines up perfectly with the age of Saturn's rings. Now, the idea that Saturn once had a giant moon isn't exactly new. Scientists have been suggesting it since the 1970s, but now it's starting to look like a real possibility. And if it turns out to be true, we'll be able to check off to major Saturn mysteries. Okay, great, but where did the moon go? Well, according to the simulation results, it's probably still around. Some of the material that made up the moon ended up coalescing around Saturn's equator, forming the rings we see today. And the rest of it crashed into Saturn and changed its rotation. So the next time you look up at Saturn and its beautiful rings, you can thank its lost moon for both of them. It's amazing to think that just a few 100 million years ago, Saturn looked very different, if not on its side. But our solar system has been a pretty wild place throughout history. There have been so many collisions that the orbits of most of the planets have changed dramatically, including Earth's. And who knows, maybe one day something weird will happen to Earth's orbit, and we Lines have a front row seat to a supernova. You can learn at your own pace and work through fun interactive lessons that let you play around with concepts instead of just watching a lecture. As you drag the planets into different positions, the simulation shows you exactly what would happen to their orbits.